Welcome to the Sharpe Way Show, everyone. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of your evening out and watching this awesome show at 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Yes, you have to look at me. Today, I have with me, I am very lucky that I have someone out of the great state of Virginia, a progressive activist, former candidate.
Old Dominion.
The man himself, Conrad, see if I get it right, Schesventer.
Schesventer, yes, sir.
There we go.
It's not as sharp.
Right.
It's not as sharp, but it is a good name.
There we go. I appreciate that. My friend, I'm glad you came aboard. And for those of you interested in Conrad, head over to friendsforconrad.com to see what he's doing. The thing I know, and this is a common thing with a lot of progressives now, and I think a lot of people who are conservative don't get the frustration that a lot of progressives have right now. And the frustration is that many progressives feel like Biden isn't moving fast enough for them, that Biden isn't doing as much as he said, or I think that people thought I was kind of joking when I said, you know, Biden is going to have a little bit of trouble because there is a rift in the Democratic Party, right? Prior to the election, many Democrats were united against Trump. It was like, let's get Trump out, whatever it takes, let's just get him out. Okay, you got him out. But now Democrats are kind of having a rift, and you're part of that rift. Am I right?
Oh, yes. I would be more on his left flank and proud to be so. And I ran in 2022, so I was on the same little guides that people would say, hey, Virginia Beach people, vote Joe Biden, also Conrad Schesventer, but vote Joe Biden. And we would explain to how much that he is used as a tool to get Trump out of office.
Yep.
Now, what is the tool doing? Trump's gone, right? So now he has to actually do something in office. And we are just looking at our watches, waiting for something to happen.
I think the biggest thing, or maybe one of the big things, I shouldn't say the biggest, but many people I know, they were very concerned about the $15 an hour minimum wage. And they thought that was going to be a right off the bat, easy day, slam dunk. They all thought that was the answer. But he kind of said, no, can't do that now.
Yeah, he told both a select meeting of mayors and governors that, hey, might want to look forward to this being defeated. Not even part of the, it was originally proposed, if I recall, as part of the COVID stimulus relief bill.
Yep.
Through reconciliation, which remember, we can only do 3 of those a year anyway. But based on the slow speed that this one's doing, are we even going to get the one? First of all, that's a question. But then they just took it out. And before that, they say, hey, governors and mayors, we're just going to pull the 15 back. And then here we are now dealing with trying to fight to get the bill passed. And the 15 is not even part of it.
Not even part of it. I agree. I feel like, look, obviously conservatives are happy about this, obviously, right?
They would be, yeah.
They're happy about it. I get it. But if you're progressive, this is something that you're not going to be happy about. What do you see as a remedy for someone who thinks $15 an hour is the right answer? Is it just pressure on him? Is it we surrender and go to the next thing? What's the thing you do?
Well, it'd definitely be pressure, but it would have to be pressure from a lot more voices than just moi. It would have to be millions upon millions of people who decide to take up that same leftist flank and then push not just Biden, but also our 2 state senators. Also in Virginia, we got 11 House of Representative members. We got to be pushing them too. This is how you push the legislation across the line just to even get it to his desk. Well, that's how you apply the pressure.
You're bringing up a point that I bring up often. Clearly, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a fan of the $15 an hour minimum wage. But that isn't the point. The point is you're a Democrat. You voted for your guy to push your agenda, and he's not. And this is not the way it's supposed to work, if that makes any sense, right? So even though I'm not trying to push $15 an hour wage, I am trying to have representative democracy, which is you voted for it. He should be doing it in theory, at least, right? He should be. And if he's not, it goes back to my worry that I've always had, which is that Democrats and Republicans in general are far more concerned about their own political power and being elite than they are of the actual people they represent.
I'd agree with that very, very easily. You could sort of say that this is like a whole back to the term corporatism, where the corporate Dems are the one that's entrenched. they're elite, and those are the ones that are tough to push out. I'm a fan of your show, so I watched when Magdalene on, and you guys have both mentioned how AOC wasn't necessarily liked, philosophically wise, but game respect game. So
Absolutely.
You like the fact that
she busted her run for that seat.
Exactly. And how do you do that? You got to beat someone like Crawley, who was a very entrenched person himself. And it's not just Dems, it's also the moderate Dems, the moderate Republicans. There's elites on both sides because they're sort of, maybe they use each other as a tool to make a heel of the other side, securing their own votes just to get elected, and then slowly, inch by inch, move balls, decades down the line.
Right.
When we want stuff now, and it's just not, do we have the patience for it? And I don't know if we do.
Well, there's the other piece, right? There was supposed to be, and I feel this was more direct, I felt at least, that if the Democrats win in Georgia, there was supposed to be basically $2,000 checks like the next week, right? Like, what we won, there's your money. It was almost like, and I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It's like, it was almost like a bribe, right? You do it, you get your money, right? It was almost like that. Am I wrong?
No, rhetorically, that's pretty much exactly what it was. And there was a Mediaite article about the people who were knocking the doors in Georgia saying that, hey, we want you to vote for Ossoff and Warnock. The reason why is that, hey, we're going to get these stimulus checks. And they kept telling the people 2,000. They weren't saying 1,400 because we already got the 600 previously in December. And that's the first thing that seemed like, oh, wait, they're not even really going to try that hard to get this done. As soon as they get in office, they're like, no, we didn't mean 2,000, even though it was on the literature that they would knock on the doors to get people to vote for. And now it's like, is it even going to be anything at all?
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is, in something like the stimulus check, this is actually very popular among Americans in general.
Yes.
This isn't just a Democrat or progressive thing. I mean, moderates want the check. Republicans want the check. Even Trump was talking about the check, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he came right back around on it. That was pretty good. If we just mentioned game recognized game when it came to AOC. I loathed Trump as long as the day is. But hey, he went straight for 2,000 even before the bill was fully made into law for himself, knowing that he could use his power in that moment to try to do something. In that moment, it became more to the progressive side than even people like Bernie are.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very populist. And that just shows you that there is an appeal Republicans, repeal Democrats. And guess who didn't get it done? The elitist corporatist people. So
absolutely. And this is the thing that I thought this was a mistake that Republicans did, is trying to make Biden look like he's Bernie. Biden's not Bernie. He's not a hardcore socialist at all. He is as establishment as Hillary Clinton was. I mean, he's establishment. That's what he is. He's an establishment Democrat, and he's only going to move as far left as he thinks is required to keep his party satisfied. And that's as far as he's going to go.
And then he can move right back to the center now that he's in office.
Yes, I think that's true. I do think that that's really who he is. Now, the fear that some people on the right might have is, well, if Biden feels pressure, he might move further left, but not because he's left, because he cares about keeping his coalition together. And I think that's your goal, isn't it? I mean, that's really your goal. Your goal is to put the pressure on him to make him feel like he may lose coalition, that now he's got to move left and be more progressive. But
the question would be how. See, it's easy to push someone like that when it's a primary type function, when you're trying to get the votes nationally of people who are far to the left and they can't imagine voting for Trump. Or look, and not to hate on libertarianism, but they are the most solid third party out there. They would probably say that is a, put into quotes, wasted vote. So how do you get people over to vote for Biden? You got to push them more and more to the left for the soul of the Democrat Party. But now that he is in office, it's like he wants to run out the clock.
But then do you attack his flank, as you said? You said you want a left flank. Do you attack his flank? Do you do things like, I'm making this up because it's personal for me, attacking someone like Andrew Cuomo or someone like that and making them put pressure on him? Is that a realistic tactic or is it not?
Well, I'm trying to imagine how would we want to use Cuomo for that, because I know he's in his own hot water right now.
He is.
Regarding his own things, but that wouldn't necessarily be a tool that you could usher in to Biden to get him to move left so much as to say Democrats are bad, which means you might have to make him go even further to the center.
Got it.
Which that could come back to bite Democrats.
So you're actually saying that if you put too much pressure on Biden, there is a chance that it backfires and he goes more to the center.
Well, never said that we were always the biggest fans of Biden to begin with. So in that instance, so you could always count on him to do Biden type stuff.
Got it. Okay. Let me grab a couple of comments if I can. I think Jimmy's teasing. He says, do we need a tool in office? Well,
if we say that maybe they're all tools in their own way, the pejorative tool.
There we go.
the metaphor tool to get out bad people, then yeah.
There we go. Connie is not a fan of minimum wage. She says, may as well make minimum wage $1,000 an hour. Same end result, end the Fed.
Now, let's go back and remember that even libertarians have liked the idea of a basic income. Milton Friedman did the negative income tax in the
Absolutely.
70s. So maybe it's not so much we're trying to fight for the idea of getting employers to be the ones to pay people more money so much as just getting money to people. So maybe
I think that's the thing that people lose sight of. You make a very valid point. I don't think that Americans actually want a higher minimum wage. What I think Americans want is people to have a fair lifestyle. And they think the only way to get there is through a higher minimum wage. I think a higher minimum wage isn't the goal unto itself. I think it's a method that some people believe is the right way to get to a better goal. And Friedman's negative income tax, if you were to put it into play, negates the need for a minimum wage because everybody gets a living income. So it negates that the need for that or anything else. I don't know. Are you in favor of a UBI instead of a minimum wage? Do you want both? Do you care either way?
Even before COVID came around, I was flirting with the idea in my mind, hey, everybody talks about Medicare for all. What if Social Security was a version of for all? Right off the bat, bam, that's a universal basic income. Of course, you would probably need a much heftier version of a payroll tax in order to get most of the funding in. Whether or not we want to discuss modern monetary theory and whether we even need taxes to do that, that's a whole nother debate. But yeah, I had previously been thinking about it. But now when you think about COVID, and how the dramatic demand in economic terms across the board, so many millions of people losing their jobs that don't even have that minimum. Yeah. So they need somehow to still pay their rent and buy stuff on Amazon. And how are you going to do that?
Buy stuff on Amazon. That's true. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish you were wrong, but you are completely right. Yes. That I think is my worry about a UBI or negative income tax is that what will wind up happening is it's basically a gift to Amazon, right? That's my worry, is that we're basically going to be giving it all to Amazon, which maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe whatever we get the money, we're giving it to Amazon. I'm not sure, but that is my worry, that companies like Amazon will be totally ready to absorb all that UBI money, right? They will be on board.
Yeah. And do we wish to flirt with the idea of, trusting the bust or busting the trust back in the old Standard Oil days? And maybe Amazon is just a little bit too big.
There's another issue, right? The COVID response, the way the shutdowns actually worked is they strengthened all the oligarchs and the monopolies. They strengthened. I know the goal was to save the individual person, but what actually wound up happening is it changed our economy massively. I mean, just massively. The amount of people now who don't even imagine going shopping anymore. That's like not a part of what they do. They immediately go online and purchase whatever they want and expect it to come to them within 1 or 2 days. It is.
The only real reason I would go out to really Sharpe, I guess, at say a Kroger or something like that is, bam, I got to get a couple more Pepsi 2 liters, is maybe a frozen pizza, because you're not going to get that delivered. Well, you could deliver pizza, but then again, if you want a bunch of them, you got to go to the grocery store in order to do
Absolutely.
that. You just put in your headphones. You don't want to talk to anybody, and then you're in and out in a few minutes. You try to limit the social interaction.
And there's the other part that you just mentioned, right? For a year, there's been almost no social interaction. So now even when we go out, you're right, we put our headphones on, our mask on, you can't see our face, you can't hear us. We buy our stuff, we swipe, when we talk to the person in front of us, we swipe our card and we walk out. It's like it might as well have been virtual reality.
Yeah, we wanted to socially distance, and even if we didn't do that physically, we did it mentally.
Yes, absolutely. Very true. Let me grab a couple more comments if I could. Thomas says, the DNC and the RNC serve the elite at the expense of the people worldwide who are not wealthy. Everything they are involved in makes them richer, I assume, and decreases the quality of life for the rest of us.
Well, they designed the playing field, so...
I do see a lot of that. I really do. I see a lot of the things that pop up just continually to make the wealth gap deeper and deeper. And I am worried. So
we just touched on how much of Amazon has been benefiting. Yet we still did everything that we did in a normal economy, in the sense that even if we get all these thousands of dollars in checks, we spend it on stuff. And what we were doing, spending it mainly on these online companies. So the trillions of dollars that we briefly got for a month back in March or April, if it was delayed, immediately went back to the rich people. So we're still poor.
Yes.
And they got even trillions of dollars even richer. So,
Conrad, can I get you to shift to your left a little bit so you're more centered?
There we
go. Thank you. So be more centered. Thank you. So the question I have, though, is, now you brought us up, the guys, Bezos and Amazon. The answer to many of these issues and concerns from Democrats has almost always been tax the wealthy, right? That's almost always been the answer, tax the wealthy. Even that Biden has backed off on. Wasn't he supposed to have hold on? Wasn't it supposed to be a tax on people with $400,000 or more? Wasn't that the original idea?
And what would he put it at? Back just a percentage back to what it was prior to Trump's 2017 one?
I think he was trying to basically back off whatever Trump did. I mean, Trump tried to back off whatever Obama did. Now Biden should have back off whatever Trump did.
So nothing really ever gets done. It's just a seesaw back and forth.
Yes. That definitely is an issue. Yes.
Prior to, I think, the Obama administration, what was it, 39% on the top?
I actually don't remember.
1%, yeah.
I
don't remember if it goes even as high as 39. So,
but I guess the issue is, I'm seeing it here in New York. I'm not sure if you're seeing it in Virginia. But as we talk about taxing the wealthy here in New York, as we talk about doing a transaction fee tax when it comes to trading stocks and things of that sort, we find that our financial institutions are leaving New York City. They're leaving New York. My worry always is the same. If you tax the wealthy, they go someplace else where they're not taxed as much. They leave. They don't actually pay it. They go to the next state, that next door, or 3 states down, or whatever the case may be.
I believe that the phrase is voting with your feet, in which case that happens a lot from California to other states as well.
Absolutely.
Just as to the left, prototypically, as New York is, in some of their own ways. And Texas always seems to be the state that individuals would like to move to escape that high tax feature. But this comes down to whether or not are you escaping I think it's 10% that you have as the state income tax in New York?
No, it isn't that high. The state income tax no, it's only a couple of percent. It's like 2 or 3. It's not that high.
I thought it got on the highest earned income in Virginia, I think it was 6. But
no, the income tax in New York State isn't that high. The problem is you have to add on top of that all the other local stuff, and it winds up being that high.
Yeah, and I imagine in New York you're killed with property taxes.
But not just that, but like counties have taxes. New York City has its own income tax, right? So each other area has, and you add it all up, and before you know it, and New York City has its own sales tax. So you pay extra for selling something in New York City.
Because I had my day in the sun when I was myself a libertarian. This is back in the late 2000s through early 2010s. And I really liked the idea at the time of the fair tax.
Yeah.
And the fair tax being that 23% number. And people who would detract on it would call it very similar to a European value-added tax, where everything had levels of certain taxation. But don't we already have that, as you just described it? Hey, we got so much sales taxes here, fees and uses, property taxes as well. So you wouldn't really have as much if this is a national tax, like a Biden thing. You can't really move states to avoid it unless you are big enough like Bezos to literally take up Amazon and put it in another country.
Got it. Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay. I get what you're saying. Okay.
And would he want to do that? That's the question.
Shelley asks, do you have any thoughts on how the Democratic Party is handling the embarrassment of Andrew Cuomo? I mean, I don't know if you're seeing much of it in Virginia. In New York, it's all we talk about, right? Obviously, he's our governor. But I don't know. Are people talking about it in Virginia? Is it a thing?
It's not much of a Virginia topic, but it's definitely on our news. It would be something you could see. The local go-to here I go to is Wavy News 10, and that would probably be something that we could mention. And I watch CNN just as much as anyone else would, in which case, yeah, they're going to talk about that. I mean, his brother is the co-host on CNN. So it's not like you're going to be able to avoid that very well. So, yeah, we know of the situation that's going on with Governor Cuomo.
Do you think most Democrats, scratch Democrats, do you think most progressives, I know progressives aren't always Democrats, Democrats aren't always progressives. So let me just say progressives. Do you think most progressives are behind Governor Cuomo or no? What does your gut tell you?
Gut would be no.
No. Okay. That makes me feel good. I'm happy that you said that. I'm glad. I hope you're right. I really do.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if it comes to another election, are they just as much like Tea Party Republicans falling in line?
Yes, I think they've seen that, right? And that's my worry. People are telling me, they're saying, Larry, you don't get it. Cuomo's so hated. He's weak now. We could beat him. The Republicans can beat him. You'll see he can be beat. No, Democrats, as much as they hate Cuomo, and many of them do, they hate Republicans more. Mm-hmm. They're going to vote for Cuomo and they're going to hold their nose and vote for Cuomo anyway. Doesn't really matter that they don't like Republicans. Republicans hate Democrats. Doesn't matter that we hate each other in this country. We just do. Republicans hate Democrats. Democrats hate Republicans. But not everyone hates libertarians. See, we're the peacemakers.
There you go.
So there we go. But I'm with you. I think while many progressives don't like Cuomo, I still think when push comes to shove, if it's Cuomo against Republican, I think they'll still vote Cuomo.
So you got to compare briefly to Virginia, and we don't have the ability to have back-to-back terms for governor. You literally have to take a break. And we have, from 2013 to 2017, we had Terry McAuliffe, who's been on CNN quite a bit himself in his break, who is now running for governor in 2021, but he couldn't do it from 17 to 21 because by law, you can't do it back-to-back. And I'm just wondering if maybe is there someone in New York who wants to run to his left in a primary? Is that something that they do?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And it happened last time, but she got crushed in the primary. Yes, we had Cynthia Nixon, the popular actor from the TV series Sex and the City. And no, she got crushed in the primary. But she did run, and she ran to the left of him. Absolutely. She ran to the left, and it did not go well. In our state, he runs the state with an iron fist.
Yeah, like that.
Yes, iron fist, absolutely. So David says Biden is a nicer version of Hillary.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. At least
that's the perception, yeah.
His speech is nicer. He comes across as nicer. His conversation comes across as nicer. He's not a big personality. I say it often. It's hard to love or hate him.
But as you were saying that he was nicer, I was flashing back to all the times he would verbally say, if it's like a debate or a speech, that, man, I want to take Trump outside and beat him behind the gym.
That's right. Yes.
Is that nice? No, that's not nice.
That's true. But if it were me, I was saying that if I was his campaign manager, I mean, that's the kind of red meat that the average Democrat love to hear. They love to hear anti-Trump stuff. So anytime he said, I'm going to go beat Trump up, Democrats are like, yeah, go get him. We'll bring him now. I mean, they loved it. They were eating it up.
You remember that time he flipped out on that guy, I think it was in Pennsylvania or Ohio, one of the two states, about guns.
Oh,
and
yes.
He said that he was full of BS to his face.
Yes.
That's a little violent.
That is. It's true. So maybe he's not David. Yeah. Maybe you're wrong on this one. Maybe Biden's just hiding it. Maybe he's on a down low.
There we go.
Maybe he is. Absolutely. So Mr. Recipe says, true story, neither party has our back. I do feel that lots of people are frustrated with their party, right? And even when I meet Democrats in New York, and most of my friends in New York City are Democrats, and when I talk to them, I ask them, I said, do you really like the party? And almost all of them go, no, they have a problem. They wish it was this. They wish it was that. They wish it was this. They wish it was that. I think many of them are voting just because they're afraid that they're going to lose too much if the Republicans win. That is what I think most of my friends who are Democrats feel. They're afraid of Republicans. They think Republicans will take too much away. They feel Republicans will turn our country back into something evil or bad. So they vote Democrat as lesser of two evils. That's how I feel.
That's how we would feel in Virginia too. I'm very familiar with, we would have very similar rhetoric. Of course, it was very easy to run against someone like Corey Stewart, who was still running on the supporting Confederate statues. So it's sort of like he would make Republicanism out to be a caricature, and they don't have to paint the Republicans as a caricature as much as he could paint them himself. So how do you get a better Republican to run? And is that something you could do in New York too? That would be the question, or is it too far behind in terms of population?
I
There's just
think
too many Democrats.
The last time the Republicans had a shot at winning in New York State in a statewide election, don't get me wrong, Republicans win in New York State locally. Like we get local sheriffs who win, we get local county executives who win, city council people who win. Absolutely, we get locally. But across the state, a Republican hasn't had a chance to win in the state since 2002. Maybe 2006 was a shot. Maybe. That's probably pushing it. But since then, it just has been very low chance. And the people who would vote Democratic, many of them are leaving the state. We've lost over 1.5 million already. So a lot of people are leaving. I think the numbers right now, it's about 2.5, almost 3 to 1 registered Democrats, Republicans. So it's tough.
Who is the one leaving? If it seems like Democrats persistently win, is it Democrats that are leaving the state, or is it Republicans that are leaving the state?
It's mostly Republicans.
Okay.
It's mostly Republicans.
Do they settle in already Republican states like South Carolina?
They go.
Florida.
Biggest states they go to, believe it or not, is Arizona, Florida, Texas, North Carolina. Those are the 4 big ones, right? Those are the 4 big ones. Most of the states they go to have no income tax. It's true. Most have no income tax. So they're looking for tax breaks. So most have no income tax, but not all. If they don't have no income tax, they have lower taxes. And it's not hard to find a state with lower taxes than New York. That's not a challenge. Right? It's pretty easy to do. So they usually go to those places as a general rule. So I think our governor literally said, his words were, there is no place for conservatives in New York State.
So
that's his words.
The nose. Yeah.
He's like, leave. I don't care. Bye. Now
it shows you that he doesn't want to represent everybody.
Oh, he's obviously said that. I mean, not even close. He's obviously said that. He's not, doesn't even care. Yeah. So, but the other issue we find is in New York City last year, because of the COVID response, a lot of Democrats left the city. We lost at least 400,000 New York City residents left. Supposedly they're going to be coming back. I'm not sure how many are going to come back. I don't know. So there may be a shift in demographics there because most people in New York City are Democrats. It's something like 70 some odd % of registered voters in New York City are Democrats, something like that. So it's a huge chunk. It's a huge chunk. So, all right, let me grab a couple more if I could. All right, let's see here. Joe, of course, goes dual weight income tax and the IRS. Well, you could do that if you followed what Conrad was talking about. If you had either a flat tax, then you don't need an IRS. Everyone's just there's no looking at how you spent your money or what you did. It's how much did you make? Pay your flat percentage. The IRS, I mean, is shrunk by what, 90% if you do that? Or if you have go ahead.
You remember in 2016, Ted Cruz was talking about filing the income tax on an index card.
Yes.
I mean, even if you get it down to that simple, and man, we would like the idea of simplicity.
Yes. But
you still need it. You need an IRS as the government agency to bring the revenue in, even if you don't like it being predatory. And I'm a progressive here, so I don't want to necessarily spend the entire time, say, bad-mouthing the previous Obama administration, but isn't that something that was a little bit of a controversy for them, that they sort of aimed the IRS in a way that frightened some conservatives?
Absolutely. I agree. I don't like the idea that the IRS can be used as a weapon. I don't. It should just be for collecting whatever flat tax you're going to create. Yeah. Shadford says no welfare or entitlements, then you can have a UBI. Well, that actually was the goal. That was the goal. The goal was to do that. I don't know if you can do that, but that was the goal. Conrad, what do you think about that?
I was about to say that Friedman was brought on as a Nixonian advisor. So this is the late 60s, early 70s, and this is after Medicare and Social Security. So this is something he was proposing even after so much of the current welfare state was created.
Yeah, so I agree with Schesventer that would be the goal, right? Why would you want to have UBI and then? And I think my biggest worry is right now is that, you saying how unhappy many progressives are, and I think you represent a lot of progressives because I've heard a lot of people who have spoken in a similar way that you've spoken. So I think you represent a lot. My worry is then Biden or whomever is the person after Biden, whenever this happens, in an attempt to keep his coalition together, is going to create some very bad UBI scheme that is just going to make things worse. That is my worry, that in his fear or rush to just pacify his people, he's going to make something that's going to be just terrible. I don't know. Are you concerned or no?
Well, I'm not that concerned because even as recently as the primaries for this past election, it was only Andrew Yang who was talking about a UBI to begin with. It wasn't widely accepted. UBI mainly became mainstream because of COVID, where it seemed like we have to rain money down from the helicopter. Otherwise we're going to have tens of millions of people suddenly unemployed. And even now it's not thought about, is this something that we could do monthly? It's not like it's being greatly proposed. True. And then you got to remember how many versions we already have. And we already mentioned Social Security. We also have the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is basically a version of it. SNAP is aimed directly at food, but it's a version of direct aid. If you would have to take so much out just to put in the UBI in if you wanted it to be a form of replacement as opposed to supplementation.
Right. Well, if I remember Yang's idea, it was just an additional $1,000. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it was, right? It was just another
freedom
$1,000.
Dividend.
There we go. The freedom dividend. Yes, another $1,000 on top. Now he's running for mayor here in New York City here.
How's that going? I haven't
Great
heard much
for him.
in the past few weeks.
He is popular here, as he always has been. In my view, he's the current front runner. I don't know how long that will last, and I don't know if but sometimes people become the front runner and then go away. But I think at the moment, because of his popularity, he's the obvious front runner. I think if the establishment does not fight him, I think he's going to win the primary and then therefore be our next mayor. I think that's going to happen. Now, if the establishment fights him, they can knock him out.
Do you become establishment if you've been in there for a few years? Because de Blasio is very, very, very progressive, borderline socialist, in which case, are you part of what is known as the New York Democrat establishment simply because you've won? Or even the more rich rich Democrat types don't even like de Blasio, and maybe that's why Yang could be leading the pack.
Yes, well, de Blasio can't run again. So he's not even in the fray.
I'm still correct. So, yeah.
Right, he can't run. New York City has term limits. New York State does not. New York City has term limits on city council and term limits on mayor. So we're good when it comes to that.
I'm just curious. For some flashing in my mind here, Bloomberg, did he do something to briefly change term limit laws?
Bloomberg bought another term. I'm not even joking. He literally
tens of billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yes, he said. Well, he bought his way into the debates too. Yeah. Literally, he was like, "You only get 2 terms." He was like, "No, I don't." Yeah, it's the rules. He went, "Who needs rules? I got a checkbook. How much is it going to cost me?"
Let the money go down. Like that. Yeah.
It's $10 billion is what it costs. Here you go. Thank you. I get another term, right? They went, "Who needs rules? We're just kidding." But if you remember during the debates last year, when 17 Democrats on the running, and then they were like, well, you have to have X amount of dollars or Y amount of people, whatever it was. And Tulsi Gabbard was trying to get on and she couldn't. Yang, and they were begging, change the rules for us. It's not fair. They're like, we cannot change the rules. Then Bloomberg shows up.
Bloomberg comes in. Yeah.
And he breaks all the rules because he has no donors. He goes, yeah, we're going to change the rules, right? They went, we can't. He went, hold on, how much is it going to cost me again? And that was it. Done. Rules changed. So literally Bloomberg bought his way.
Didn't he commit like $500 million or something like that at the Campaign Plus? And
Yes.
this is after he didn't last long in there himself. So he's just like, whoever wins, I got to float hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And is that very progressive?
Doesn't sound progressive to me.
No, it doesn't.
What people don't realize is when Bloomberg was a mayor, he was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that. They think Bloomberg was a Democrat. No, Bloomberg was a Republican mayor. I know some people are watching now and their heads exploded. Yes, how New York City works. If you are a communist, then you're a Democrat. If you're just a socialist, you're a Republican. That's how New York City works, right? There's nothing else. There's only communists and socialists. So if you're a communist, you're Democrat. Oh, I'm not a full-on communist. Oh, you're a Republican then. That's how that works in my city. So
I'm wondering, how does Yang come off in that instance? Is he just seen as the base socialist, not a communist? Or
no, I think Yang could actually run as Republican if he wanted to. I think he could. I think he could.
It seems like he has a lot of business chops.
Yes, and he could actually win as Republican if he wanted to. But there's no need to. Mm-hmm. Right? That would be a gamble. Bloomberg gambled running as Republican, but he won. He had the money and the cash. Yang doesn't want to gamble. Run as a Democrat, win the primary, you're in. But say de Blasio was running again, he would have to have a very hard primary against him. So instead, he'd run as a Republican and win. So since there's no incumbent, he just takes Democrat.
Seems like that's the one city of the country, besides, I guess, South Bend, Indiana, where you can be a mayor and then run for president. Because de Blasio was also briefly up there on that stage.
So was Giuliani. So was Giuliani. So was Bloomberg. Yes, they all try. But the thing that people don't realize is once you become mayor of New York City, your career is now over. That's how that works. They all think it's the stepping stone to something. But I would say Giuliani, Bloomberg, de Blasio would show you, no, that's the end.
Yeah, that's why you need to have a multimedia conglomerate across many countries that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Yes, that's always good. So yes, I want one of those too. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love that. When I had to work at a front desk.
There we go. So let me move on to I think other pieces of Biden where I know not just progressives are unhappy here, but also libertarians. And that is the idea of, kind of reopening up the detention centers on the border. This makes progressives unhappy and it makes libertarians unhappy. We don't like that either. And AOC has been open about this is BS. You know what? When it was Trump, it was kids in a cage.
Yep.
But now that it's Biden,
it's still the cage if you put a bow on it, man. But
we put a bow on the cage. So clearly it's not a cage anymore. I mean, this part obviously personally bothers me, right? Obviously this bothers me. Is this a hill that progressives and libertarians can jump on together to die on? Or is this not worth it and other things are more important?
Well, I would like to think we could do multiple things at once, but this is still incredibly important and worth doing right now. And I say, hey, jump on as a team. Let's storm this hill at the same time. Before I ran for my first foray into politics in 2018, I was protesting these, we call them basically immigrant camps. In 2018, I had my sign up. I was in Norfolk. I was in marching. And if it was worth marching then, it's worth marching in 2021 just because the presidency changed. The actions are the same.
Yes, I agree completely. And that's the part that bothers me because if you're Obama and you put kids in cages, you knew that was fine. You were okay with it. But Biden talked and the Biden team talked about how bad it was. So while I'm not happy that Obama did it or that Trump did it, I'm more unhappy with Biden because he talked about how bad it was. Right?
Trump, at least they said that that's something they wanted to do and they attempted to defend it.
Absolutely.
Even when he was basically raked through the coals, and that was the only time it seemed like he might come close to apologizing for something that he'd done, he still ended up coming back around and saying that, hey, it's a program that we wanted to do.
Yes.
Biden would be saying that Biden, and basically I would probably admit any other Democrat that would have won, assuming that they keep coming up with this program, is that, hey, this is something that we want to end back in the time in order to get votes like mine. Now that I'm no longer needed, then what are they going to do? And just keep the ball rolling?
Well, see, I guess there's the other issue, right? When you have, I talk about this often. I know that in New York, there's an active DSA. And for those who don't know what that is Democratic Socialists of America. But they're really right now just a wing of the Democratic Party. They're not their own party, really. I mean, in theory, they could be, I guess, but they're not right now. Mm-hmm. Are you worried that, in the next 6 months, if Biden doesn't shift far enough left to keep progressives happy, that the DSA is going to mix with the Green Party and become a separate party?
I'm not necessarily too worried about that. The wing of the Democrat Party that I would like to consider myself a part of would be more of the Justice Democrat wing, which is very AOC-like. Also, Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar. The goal of us, philosophically, was to take over the Democrat Party as itself. And if that fails, then what always was there the first time? Green Party, socialists. What you would find is that it's actually very possible for the Democrat Party to have its voting bloc shrink a little bit. And is that something that they want to do? This is why progressives need to know how much power they actually have. If they flirt with the idea of trying to withhold votes for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House in order to force a vote for Medicare for all, you actually could put 10 to 12 people together. And since the Republicans aren't going to vote for her anyway, it was only, 15 people that was the difference between Republicans and Democrats. Suddenly you have a lot more power than just your 12 to 15 seats, which signify that you do. Very similar to the Freedom Caucus for the Republicans.
Right.
You just have to have the will. And this is something I would encourage progressives to do that.
You say this. I've thought about this for the Black community. Mm-hmm. And years ago, before I was a libertarian, I was just a third party guy. I was like, Nader and Perot. I was like that, right? Before I was libertarian. And I used to go to a lot of my Black friends. I remember back when I was in the Marine Corps in the 90s, I even said this. I was like, why doesn't every Black person in America just one year vote Republican? Just 1 year. Every Black person in America vote Republican. And everybody's like, why? Oh, the Republicans are evil. I'm like, no. Just even if you hate Republicans, I don't care if you hate them, just vote for them anyway for 1 year. Because if you voted 1 year Republican and the Republicans actually said, we can get Black votes? Oh my God, I didn't know we could get them. Maybe we should actually care about Black people. And Democrats would go, wait a minute, we can lose Black votes? Oh my God, maybe we should care about Black people because neither party does. So either one could actually do something and take action. And I think in your view, maybe the progressives are similar. If you pull away from Democrats, you're saying Democrats might go, whoa. Let me do this. Because here's what I know will happen. On the places where progressives and libertarians match, libertarians will grab you in a heartbeat. We will woo you and we will grab you in a heartbeat. We will woo you right to our side and try to get that vote. Libertarians will. We'll try to grab you on those pieces. And if Democrats can't get you, that may be your way out.
It's the same thing that we were just talking about, how we could storm that hill along the immigration front. We could also do that with drug laws. We could do that with reforming policing. There's so many things that would be considered similar viewpoints between progressives and libertarians, which wouldn't necessarily mean, hey, I'm suddenly a libertarian again, or you're suddenly a progressive. It just means that we believed distinctly that the ideas are good, and that's something that's worth fighting for. And it's not worth giving up simply because you're afraid of Republicans.
Yes,
and vice versa.
Absolutely, I agree completely. Yes. Let's see if I can keep going here. The wealthy always leave. That's funny. They do, but again, if it's national,
it's Atlas Shrugged. It's Atlas Shrugged, basically. Is that if you have the power to go to Galt's Gulch, then you would do that.
Yes.
How exactly do you escape that? I guess you have to maybe reform the idea of what is considered taxation. It just floated something like a Wall Street tax, like for each transaction you do is like the half or fraction of a penny, and how much that would raise. You can't escape that, even if you're out of the country.
Well, yeah, but the thing that I was thinking about, right, and this is one of the things I talked about for helping education, which is if you actually create a cryptocurrency for education, an education coin, and you allow the banks to transfer, dollars to eCoin, and they get a fee. if you give them a fee, there's nothing. Well, there's two things that banks love. The first thing is guaranteed government money. Boy, they love that. Yes, they are like they have beautiful dreams when that's around. They love that. And the second thing they love is transaction fees for them doing nothing but pressing a button in the computer. Those are the two most favorite things that banks love more than anything. So what I'm saying is, if I give the banks that as a way they can transfer the e-coin, whatever that coin is, back to dollars and back and forth, they actually wouldn't be unhappy with a small state fee because it's free money.
And so, specifically state, like New York?
Specifically state, yes. If we would do something like that, then banking in New York State would want to stay. That's a way of keeping my financial industry here, right? It's basically free money to fix our budget. Now, of course, I get sued. That's fine, whatever. I still want to keep my banking industry here, and taking a fee off of that, nobody cares. It's basically free money. So now that's another way of making money, but they're still getting what they want. And now obviously we can fix our budgetary problems. And if that happens, they don't leave. The problem is what we're trying to do now feels like we're taking money away from them, because right now there aren't fees on those transactions. Well, there are fees, but they're the ones getting fees. The state's not getting any fees. If the state gets fees now, the bankers feel like they're losing money. So they're mad and angry and fight back and lobby and whatever the case may be. But if we create a new way of them making money and take a fee off the new way, they're just gaining money. They don't fight back. That's the concept, at least. So I don't know. So Jimmy asks you, he says, how does Conrad feel about the 56 executive orders?
Well, I would be against them in the sense that he was against them when he was running against Trump, it seeming how executive based that he was. I would probably want a little bit more progressive bend toward the executive orders that he is doing. And well, that means that I probably wouldn't need 56 of them in order to say, hey, I believe I have the strong executive authority now to, in an emergency COVID, everyone has Medicare for all. Do you need 55 other ones then in that moment? Or I think there was one that he flirted with the idea of making the United States federal government, the only thing it purchases is from American companies as opposed to overseas, a buy American thing. And then all he really did with the executive order was slightly open up some of the definitions of what an American company is. And it didn't necessarily mean that it was singled out to just American companies. So the order that he even did wasn't very, proactive.
Got it.
It's a lot, and it seems like a lot that doesn't achieve much.
And the two things that you brought up, which I think is funny, is one, again, the part that bothers me about this is that it seems hypocritical.
Yes.
Right? Don't get me wrong. Obama did it too, but Obama was like, his second term, he was like, I'm to hell with you Republicans. I'm doing it on my own. He said it. He was like, if you don't do it, I'm doing it. Trump said the same thing. I'm just doing it. So they all said, I'm doing it. While I don't like the executive orders, it's not hypocritical from either of them. They were like, we're doing it. That's how it works. But Biden was like, these executive orders are bad, except when I do them.
Yeah, I think he made a little bit of a controversy when he was speaking post the election with civil rights leaders. I think it was in Georgia prior to the election, trying to get them off of his back because he believed that he had to follow the Constitution. I think he, in a condescending way, said, it's the Constitution. I need to do things a certain way. 56 executive orders.
Right.
Was he lying in that moment, or was he lying now?
Well, there's the other piece. His other issue about, and this is the problem I have, is with the student debt. Right? And
I would love it.
My
worry, if they wish that off.
Say it again, I'm sorry?
I would love it if they just, snap that away, because I got another $17,000 I need to pay for.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
My concern here is we have to deal with this issue. I'm not a fan of blanket debt forgiveness. I know lots of people are. I'm in the minority. It's not
libertarian at all.
That's correct. I am not a fan, but I know I'm in the minority. Most Americans are about just make it go away. I get I'm in the minority here. But my problem with this is we've decided that it's either a flat fee or we ignore it. It is a problem, and we have to find an answer for it. I agree 100%. We've got to find an answer for it.
It's a problem that is a weight on the prototypical me, because I'm a young guy. I have a customer service job, trying hard to get a career. What do I do until I get that career? I got to pay monthly. Well, again, we're taking COVID out in the forbearance here. Right. But otherwise, we would have been paying monthly because that's something you can't even get away from if it was in bankruptcy. You have to stick with that to the end. And that zaps our ability to use discretionary income because we weren't making that much to begin with, at least most of us. And I think, remember, it's about $1.7 trillion, which is up until this year was what the entire federal student loan debt is. And how many COVID relief bills have we done officially? 2. We're thinking about 3 combined. That's what, near $5 trillion right there. That could have been one of them.
Got it.
It could have been one of them, but no.
It's funny what you're saying is you would have rather had executive order that did something like say, because it's emergency, I'm going to make Medicare for all. So if there was Medicare for all in your view, would that mean there's no insurance companies?
It would not necessarily immediately mean that, but I play chess, so I like to think down the line. If you have the ability to universally cover something and the premiums are gone, as Bernie Sanders would like to say that premiums are going to be gone, that deductibles are going to be gone, do you want to then try to shop around for private industry to provide something that the government was already doing, in which case they would naturally seemingly die out? I think Kamala was asked that on stage, and she tried to dodge that.
Don't you think that it would create a 2-tiered system? And I say that because that's what I see in New York City now. Mm-hmm. I see a system to where New York has like a healthy New York or whatever. I forgot what they call it, to where many people are on like the state type system or Obamacare or something. And what winds up happening is many of the best doctors simply take no insurance. They just don't take it. So now the wealthy go to those doctors and the middle class and the poor go to the Medicare doctors. And the service is night and day. I know I've been to both. My wife only goes to one of them. You can imagine which one she goes to. So she only goes to one of them. So I've seen both of them, right? And I feel like that's what winds up happening. Do you think that wouldn't happen?
I think if it's already happening now, it very likely could still
I agree, it is happening.
Going. If it's already happening now, I'm pretty likely to think it would still just keep going. But I'm trying to think about what us on the bottom level would be. What would be the thing that we could, what's the utility that we get out of it? And because that's an economic term, what is the service that we're getting in return for all the money that's going to be spent? And I just compare it to the fact that in a pandemic where tens of millions have lost their jobs and most of those jobs attached insurance to that job, they suddenly no longer have insurance. So we would like the idea to not only have healthcare affordable and have the money to then buy the thing that is then affordable, the universal aspect, and this could be constitutional if you choose to look at in terms of a general welfare idea, that to the general welfare of the populace cover the healthcare expenses, then that should be seen in that instance as a public good for everybody. And even still in that instance, you're still going to get that sort of top tier simply because that's what having millions and billions can do for you.
So you're saying that you think the executive order could be constitutional because you're saying general welfare. That's where your head is. I'm
not entirely sure I think that if you pass the law for Medicare for all, passing the law, it would be constitutional. I'm not entirely sure, but I have heard that
I feel like it's a bit of a stretch. That general welfare is pretty much of a stretch on that one.
It always was going to be. Section 8, Article 1 of the Constitution has always been seen as something that had a lot of leeway. And that sort of really got its, the ball rolling in the New Deal in the 30s. And they just never really got to that point. They did the half measure in the 60s by creating Medicare start at 65. I would have liked it to not even be a discussion issue now, because back then was when they made it work.
Okay.
But now we have to advocate for it now.
Matt says, what is the motivation for taking part in the workforce or contributing to society if there is UBI? I apparently don't understand the concept, although what happened is that each special group will want more and more money, and then we get the welfare back up plus UBI. I'll touch my view on this real fast. Matt, I think you have a valid point, and I'm going to talk about UBI in theory versus UBI, what I think might happen in practice. In theory, UBI is only just what it takes so you survive, so that nobody starves, so that everybody has a place to live in America. That's the theory behind it. So if you really wanted to do well, you would still have to have a job. You would get UBI, if it's straight UBI, no matter what. Everybody gets UBI in the theory of it. Even Bill Gates gets UBI. Everybody gets, for the sake of argument only, $3,000 a month. I don't know if that's the right number. I'm making it up for the sake of argument. Everyone gets $3,000 a month, and that's the number that'll make you survive in America today. That's what you can survive on. I'm making that number up, if that's the case. So if you want to do well, Matt, you still have to get a job. Would some people be happy at $36,000 a year and stay home? Yes, some would. And in theory, they could stay home on welfare. They could if they want to, but they still be spending money and hopefully making enough so that other people could do the work. But not just that. In the theoretical case, there is no welfare. There's no SNAP. There's no Social Security. There's no nothing. You only get your $36,000 a year. There's no VA benefits. There is no other government handouts whatsoever. No entitlements at all in the theory of UBI. I will tell you my view. I actually think you're right, Matt. I think people would lobby to get more, and it will begin to be that, well, I'm a veteran, so I should have $37,000. Oh, I have 2 kids. I should get $38,000. I think you're right, and that's how it will work. I don't know what will actually work. Do you have a view on this, Conrad?
I was just thinking, as you were saying, that if veterans lobbying, that reminded me of when they took on MacArthur in the 30s because they were denied their benefits. For that, veterans are the strongest of us anyway. And of course, they would want to lobby for their own interest. And especially if they had been promised that to begin with. I would also like to think that most of us would like to lobby for the good stuff, too, which is like to think that perhaps the libertarianism could be the good stuff. Progressivism could be the good stuff. We all each have our own version of activism. I'm going to activate a little bit for the UBI, and I don't necessarily immediately agree that they were going to have a massive influx of people who don't want to work if all you were going to get was what the base was anyway, because it was thought of to be a survival mechanism.
Yes, it would just be the lowest number.
It's not a really successful mechanism because you still need to do the work to get to. Everyone has the dream of wanting to not only succeed, but to have a purpose in life. And if you are not working and only taking a UBI check, you will get bored with that really quick. And you want to get back into doing something with your life. And people mainly drive that through their careers. I don't think we're going to have a massive downshifting in the amount of people willing to work because we do that for our own psyche.
Okay. All right. Joe asked, do you think UBI can work locally? He says, I don't think so, because again, if you put a tax on the rich luxury tax, people just move or buy or go outside of New York City.
I don't think we expand our mind enough for that because New York City, I assume, has many different formats of grants that they give out, not only to businesses, probably to individual people, and that acts the same way, getting money to people. People are businesses too, and vice versa. For instance, we had a thing in Virginia Beach here where we wanted to just have the Atlantic Avenue is the ocean front of Virginia Beach. And there was a lot, it's our tourist destination here. And they had a COVID relief grant program for small businesses that was up to $100,000. That is an example of, in some fashion or another, a basic income to maybe a business owner. So it could happen the same way.
Okay. Andrew asks, where does progressivism end and socialism begin? Do you consider yourself a socialist? Or do you consider yourself a progressive? How do you label yourself? Or do you?
When I ran in last year, I got a pretty hefty amount of socialist calls. In fact, one of my favorite name tags was developed by a Republican sort of heel friend of mine who put Conrad Schesventer, and it was all red, and it had the sickle for the C. It's easy to say that's because they are from the left that they are going to be seen as the Shea types or the communist types. It's easy to punch that pinata, but you got to look at the basics here. Communism, socialism, they have a very rigid government control aspect of the entirety of the economy. And I would even point out when I would debate those individuals that, hey, we have that here. Even if we all Republicans and libertarians like our school system, that actually is socialism because that is government employees. The government owns the land. That is its own little chunk, and we all seem like we like it. And it's a Democrat version too, because we vote for the increases in the funding. So that is Democrat socialism. But we're not saying that for the entirety of the economy. So this is where progressivism can come in. It's more like you increase some regulations if you get something that's considered bad, but you don't want to chase away businesses from even wanting to do business, because that zaps the entirety of the Americana idea. The business of America is still business.
So you're still pro-business in this world. You just want to give people some kind of safety net. Is that the right phrase?
A little bit more of an expanded safety net. I would. This is, I think, a lot in memes, because I like to create them on Facebook a lot myself. And I'm reminded of during, again, the Democrat debates last year, where they would like to say that it was socialism to do all this Medicare stuff. And then Bernie was like, hey, well, we do this in Scandinavian countries. And then the person who was bashing was saying, well, they're actually capitalist with a good welfare state. And then Bernie would say, okay, then let's just do it that way. And then that person's like, no, that's socialism. So you never got going with the idea that you wanted to do it, because you always can claim that it's socialism, even if you just said that, no, actually Norway, they have a lot of private property rights. There's a lot of good businesses there that just have an expansive social welfare state.
I think Sweden is similar, right? I mean, Sweden is actually very capitalist in the way they do things.
Switzerland, Denmark.
Yep, they are.
They, I think, Cato and Heritage do their freedom rankings. And the country that always likes to hype itself as being very pro-freedom seems every time to be dropping another notch or two, the United States.
Yes.
I think we were nearing around 20 or something like that.
We're nowhere near as free as we used to be. Absolutely.
Exactly. And if they're the ones that we say are communist, they're the ones that also ranked ahead of us in the freedom index. So why don't we try to get more free, but also helping the people out at the same time? I want to try to sell you on progressivism and saying that, hey, you're going to need to be totalitarianized in order to be progressive, because as you may have just mentioned, that we could fight on the same hills when it comes to civil rights of immigration, police reform, drug laws, so many things that would be anti-people.
I like that. Alongside. I like that. I like that very much. Rusby says, get those kids out of the camps. I don't hear anyone talking about it except you guys. Yes.
You remember, I think it was 2 years ago, there was some guy in Seattle, I think, actually stormed a camp and was shot dead. He was firebombing it.
Wow.
It didn't make a lot of news, but I'm like, that is the closest you're going to get to like one of those movies about someone who took on a corrupt government or something like that. He actually lived it in that moment.
Wow.
But here we are. We're talking about how we want to reform Biden. And he's just doing the same thing that Trump was doing, but a little bit better. No, I don't like our school systems.
Tom doesn't like school systems. He's like, no, I don't like it at all. Tom's like, nope, I don't even like the school system. A lot of libertarians would agree with him on that one. That's true. A lot would. Absolutely. So, Paula says, what about people who spend all their UBI on drugs?
Do they do that now?
That's a point. That's Paula. He's right. I mean, people who get money now, some of them do it. But if you had a more libertarian world, and in this case, more progressive than forward, because progressive want to get rid of the war on drugs too. If you had a more libertarian or progressive world, drugs wouldn't be illegal.
Yeah, a lot less people would be dying on fentanyl if they had access to marijuana without being arrested.
Absolutely. And it would wind up being cheaper, and there'd be more help, and there'd be no stigma, and you're just getting yourself out of the addiction. I think, good, and good, all of those things. So, all right, let's see here. Matt says, what happens when you get people making 36K? I made the number up, by the way, Matt. That might not be the number. I just threw that number out there.
That's 6,000 more than I make right now anyway. So
in New York City, that's just surviving, right? And I live in New York City. That's just surviving New York City, right? That's just making it in New York City. So yeah, that's why I use that number. Maybe it's 2K. I don't know what the number is. I made it up. So for sake of argument, 36,000, start overspending and they can't afford to live, but they don't want to get a job or can't get a job because they have no skills. Obviously, we don't let them starve. So what's the answer for that? This is another great question, Matt. I don't think that we would be letting them starve. I think if everyone got the 36,000, if that or whatever the number is, I think private charity would have a chance to pack up. The community would have a chance to ramp up. There are so many communities who don't have the institutional knowledge anymore to support themselves without government intervention. I think if you had like a UBI, the one advantage I think we'd have is now community would be like, okay, it's on us now. And we got some time to start ramping up to be able to deal with the things like the soup kitchens of the world and actually, places where churches and local civic associations would feed the homeless and give, help for the homeless.
Provided they're allowed to do that, because you do see enough of those news stories where it's not private charity that is stopped so much as the ability to try to do private charity via church is held back through a lot of government regulation. Like you can't house the homeless or something like that. I'm like, that is, progressives don't really want it. Who created that law to begin with? If it didn't exist, would you want to pass that law? That's the question.
Yes, absolutely. So good. A lot of great stuff here. Look, for those of you who want some more information on what Conrad's doing, head over to friendsforconrad.com. I appreciate that tremendously.
Hit me up on Conrad Schesventer for Virginia Beach. I hail from Virginia Beach, so come on over.
There we go. Absolutely. And of course, please like, comment, and share this to the best of your ability. So you did run for office, right?
3 times.
Three times.
Council, Virginia Beach, yep.
It
was weird because I did a little bit of a movement. I moved districts, but the districts that I had moved seemingly had a special election come up. I'm like, dude, I want to be in office because I have ideas that I want to do for the people. We have a lot of need for better public transit at Virginia Beach. We have a need we're right on the ocean, and we're also low-lying with a lot of heavy river and bay systems. We have flooding. It's a problem all the time. I wanted to help fix that. Bam, you got to do that by actually running.
I know. I love it. I love the idea of trying to actually solve local problems. Guys, the reason why I brought up elections is that that one of my sponsors is the advocates.org. Click in that link that is right here, that link that's in the description. Click that link and take the Election Integrity Survey. Please take that survey. See what you think about the election. How do you feel about it, and how do others feel about it too? So you see how others feel about it, and share it. Finish it. Share it online. It's free. It makes me happy. It makes my sponsors happy. It takes you like 3 minutes. And if you want to support the show, please do that. And of course, if you have some cash, if you're one of those people who are making more than $36,000 a year and you want to throw something my way, please do so. Patreon.com/Sharpe Way. Throw me $10 a month so that I can keep this show going and keep doing what I am doing. It's really helpful if you can make that happen. Conrad, anything that we should talk about that I missed before we wrap this up?
I think we touched on a lot of good points, mainly that, yes, progressives and libertarians can fight a lot of the same battles. And a lot of our battles now is trying to get Biden to do the things we want to do. He wasn't just going to fix everything, but also we need to make sure he's at least trying to fix something.
There we go. I appreciate that. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching tonight. I appreciate it. Conrad, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I will see you guys all